The religious love to proclaim, "I've destroyed atheism," when they've done absolutely nothing at all of the sort. The only thing they've ever destroyed is their own credibility, and we're going to do some more of that today. Granted, these people don't really care, because they're not in this for the truth, but for their own personal, childish comfort, and we're going to see some more of that too. I really wish these people could surprise us once in a while. Don't hold your breath on that. We return to Stephen Hackett once again for his asserted Atheism Destroyed video, where he does absolutely nothing but make himself look silly. You can't destroy anything by just saying, "But I don't like it." He's making a fool of himself, but that's not exactly a surprise, is it? You'd have to actually understand atheism first, and clearly he doesn't have a clue. So let's get back to it and see if he can do any better this time. I wouldn't be holding my breath, because my magic 8-ball doesn't think he will.
There's nothing really right or really wrong. What the Nazis did, for example, in Nazi Germany, that was just matter in motion.
Technically, yes, but humans can make subjective moral decisions on what they will deem as acceptable and what they will reject. That's what happened with the Nazis. One side won the war and held the other side legally accountable for their actions. Was some of that revenge? Maybe. Certainly there were groups pushing for harsher penalties because they had a vested interest in seeking revenge. Not that there's really anything wrong with that. Honestly, a lot of people try to be really high-minded about justice, and it doesn't really mean anything at all. It's just the majority coming up with rules and holding everyone, hopefully, accountable. And no, it doesn't always work out that way, does it? Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who just don't understand the process. They are looking for something that just isn't there. And that pretty much describes religion, doesn't it? People wanting stuff that doesn't actually exist.
They were just doing what they do. They were just complex arrangements of atoms doing things to other complex arrangement of atoms. On an atheistic worldview, it's hard to see how what the Nazis did was really wrong.
Right and wrong are entirely subjective. It was wrong because the people who won the war and had the power and the will to hold the Nazis accountable, they did so. And I know this makes a lot of people uneasy, but that's what's actually going on. When the Catholics were murdering heretics in the Middle Ages, it was the same thing going on. Just stapling "God said so" onto it doesn't make it any more or less moral. It's just humans doing what humans do. The same is true when the Incans or Aztecs were ripping people's hearts out of their chests. That was the moral system that they believed was true. They honestly thought that it would help the people. And in fact, and I've said this before, but the prisoners who were going to be sacrificed, they lined up willingly because they thought that their sacrifice would help their own people. This is why people need to get a grip on reality instead of just run around with their own personal emotional goalposts. What you really want to be true doesn't mean anything. Only what is actually true does.
Furthermore, it seemed obvious to me that the age-old question, why is there something, rather than nothing, is better answered on theism and Christianity than it would be on atheism.
Because you're really an idiot. I have come to the conclusion that anyone who says that, they can't be anything else. It's a nonsensical proposition that only the religious say, because it's all just projection. They're the ones that believe that something came from nothing, not us. They're the ones with the magical God thing that zippity-doo-dot everything out of its own asshole. That is not a rational perspective, and it certainly isn't one that atheism or science pushes. In fact, it does exactly the opposite. There isn't nothing. There's never been nothing. Nothing can't even exist so far as we can tell. Anyone who says that something came from nothing is a complete moron. Anybody who says that group over there says this, they're being disingenuous. They're lying to you because they're assholes. It's why this guy is such an idiot, because he came from a religious background and he's apparently unable to get that indoctrination out of his head long enough to even understand the conversation intelligently. And that's not remotely a surprise, is it?
Now, there's nothing particularly special about these atoms that surround us. They seem to be contingent things. They seem to be things that may or may not have existed.
So what? The religious say this as if it's some important revelation, but it's not. It is what it is. Stuff exists, and it's not important. Now, yes, he's trying to get to his God is non-contingent claim, but we'll set that aside until he does it because it doesn't get him anywhere either. The religious, in general, really want to think that everything around them is special, and it just isn't. They're not special either. They are desperately looking for significance, and it just doesn't exist. This, again, is because they can only see things from their particular religious perspective that they've had forced into their heads since they were small and even dumber. They've had their rational faculties damaged by the religious mind poison, and they can't see reality as it actually is anymore. Maybe they never could, I don't know. It's all of that religious baggage that makes them look so dumb, because that's exactly what their faith has made them. Dumb. Sad, isn't it?
But as Christians, we believe that something has always existed. If something hadn't always existed, then there wouldn't be anything now.
And this is where I want to point out the stupidity of from a Christian perspective, or however they put it, because you hear that all the time. I don't care about your perspective. I care about the actual truth. I care about what's really going on in the real world and the evidence that can be presented to demonstrate that it's actually so. Because they are starting off with the foregone conclusion that God done it, because that's what they really want to believe. But that doesn't make it true. Then, with no evidence at all in support, they simply demand that they're right because they really want to be, and everybody else is wrong because they don't like what other people say. They don't like what reality says. They just really want to believe. And how dumb is that?
Right? If something didn't always exist, then there wouldn't be anything for us to observe now. But there is something.
That's making a whole lot of assumptions that you have absolutely no business making. But it's always been this way because I have an emotional attachment to how things are today. Again, this is them starting off with the beliefs that they really, really like, but can't prove are true, and insisting they just have to be right because, of course, fifis. But when we point out just how irrational that is, they just shrug and keep on believing. The fact is, we have no idea what reality was like before Planck time. Not a clue in the world. In fact, at the moment anyway, we can't know. What these idiots are doing is claiming to know the unknowable because it strokes their immature egos. That's all that's going on here. They just like the idea. But liking the idea doesn't mean anything, does it? Not to anyone with a brain.
And it seems to us that it makes more sense that thing, whatever it was that has always existed, has to be something that's not contingent, not something that can just exist or not exist. It makes more sense to us to think that would be somehow a necessary being.
Nobody cares what makes sense to you. This is something they need to get through their heads. This is why the whole, but it seems to me, common sense bullshit is so stupid. This is exactly where the entire religious side goes wrong. They are after faith in fifis, not demonstrable facts. We just really like the idea. So what? Nobody cares. And you notice that he's desperately trying to get to his imaginary friend, right? Even if there was a non-contingent cause, which no one has established since we can't even show that contingency is a thing before Planck time, But now it's a being. In a second, it's going to be his God. Why? Because he wants it to be, of course. This is the stupidity of the religious. Nobody cares what you want. What you want doesn't matter. We live in a world that is what it is. It works how it works. You are irrelevant. Your feelings don't matter. Yet they can't deal with that, can they? They have to get their ego stroked, and the only way they can do that is by embracing the mind poison that they've had shoved into their heads from a young age, before they had the ability to know any better, because it makes them happy. So what? Stop making ridiculous fools of yourselves. Deal with the actual reality. You are not helping your case any. Not that most of these people care.
A supreme being.
See? What'd I tell you? It's just a hop, skip, and a jump to things that make him happy, right? Because that's what he's actually after. Emotional comfort. It's why all of this religiously loaded language is just dumb. The second that they start talking about their perspective or their worldview, the moment they bring up their opinions or it just seems to me, I just laugh in their faces. They've earned nothing else. This is how immature children operate. If there's something that you don't understand, be honest and say, I don't know. Don't just make up a bunch of random bullshit because it makes you feel good. That's idiotic. And you people really need to stop being idiots.
So it seemed to me that Christianity and theism made better sense of the idea that there's something rather than nothing.
And there he goes again. It seems to me. So what? Has he said anything else in this video so far? I don't think so. This is all just, I'm trying desperately to get to something that floats my boat, and I've been primed to accept a particular religious view, so it's just gotta be true. I don't know why he thinks that's going to impress anyone. Remember, he's the one claiming that atheism has been, destroyed. And all he can do is say, but I really want it to be true. You are not getting anywhere remotely close, pal. You're just making a complete fool of yourself. Knock it off.
I was struck by something else. How is it that on an atheistic worldview we can even have rational thought?
There is no atheist worldview. Atheism is the answer to one and only one question and absolutely nothing else. In fact, I had a discussion in the comments of a video recently where someone, I think they said they were an atheist, but I'm not positive, but they were insisting that everyone had a worldview because it's how they viewed the world. But that's not how that works. So let's go back to the definition of the word, which is a particular philosophy of life or conception of the world. But that doesn't apply to me at all. I have no philosophy of reality. I have no conception of the world. I only have the world as I observe it, and I accept it as what it seems to be. That's it. No worldview involved. I'm not applying anything beyond there it is. I am strictly following the evidence where it leads and applying nothing else beyond the assumption that we all have to make that there is a world there to begin with and that we have any access to it whatsoever. That's all, and everybody does it. I'm not going into all that stuff again, problem of hard solipsism and all that. So now I think he asked a question or made a statement or something, and I honestly don't remember what it is, so let's get back to the video and see what he has to say.
I mean, if, for example, you can explain the position of, let's say, the planet Saturn by just doing the right calculations, the planet Saturn's just obeying natural laws.
Yep. And our calculations are based on our observations, which have been borne out repeatedly. The math works because we invented the math to correspond to the reality that we actually see. Saturn is where we say it is because we have repeatedly confirmed that's how it works. The universe isn't following the natural laws so much as we made up the natural laws so that we could understand the consistency of the universe in a way that makes sense to us. We keep refining the laws that we created as we learn more about how things actually work. The laws are not prescriptive, they're descriptive. We see it, we make up laws to describe it, that's how it goes. There isn't some book of natural laws out there that nature has to follow or it goes to jail. That's stupid, but it's really shocking how little these people understand about, anything, isn't it?
But it would seem like the atoms in my brain would also just be obeying natural laws. So if we had a supercomputer and could map out, the position of every atom, it seems plausible to me on an atheistic worldview or a naturalistic worldview, we could plot out what a person would be thinking 5 minutes from now.
And some people actually believe that. Personally, I think it's bullshit. I think the hard determinist view is absurd. Maybe if it was actually possible to have that understanding and that precision, maybe, but we don't, and there's no reason to think that we ever will, so what difference does it make? That assumes that we even understand the universe all that well as it is, which we really don't. So, hard determinism? Hard pass. Come back when you can actually defend your views with evidence, when you can show me that you can do what you say you can do. And I'm not going to be expecting a whole lot because it's never going to happen.
And if that's the case, then their thinking is really just a product of atoms fizzing around, moving around in their brain. It's not really rational. It's just doing its thing. It's doing what the brain does in this environment at this temperature.
Yup. Welcome to reality. But you have to remember that rationality, that's just something else that we came up with, just like everything else. I just roll my eyes at people who think that all of this stuff has to be something magical. It's not. We look at the world around us and we come up with conclusions that match our observations so that it all makes sense to us. That's science. When those observations predict future events consistently, we figure it's right. If we find exceptions, we alter our views until we find things that work consistently again, and then we figure that's right, at least for now. Science isn't perfect, nothing is. It works well enough in the moment, but it's not eternal. Neither is philosophy, neither is psychology, neither is medicine. Nothing is ever eternal. Welcome to the real world. This is something that a lot of people, religious and non-religious people alike, they have a real problem dealing with it. Everything is just atoms doing what they do. Our brains granted us consciousness. We're now trying to deal with things as best as we can. Nobody really cares if you like it. Learn to deal.
It's not really being rational any more than Saturn's being rational when it moves around in its rotation.
But Saturn doesn't have a choice, does it? We apparently do. Now, I don't want to get into the whole free will thing or anything, because it's really off topic, but from everything we can tell, we have the ability to make choices, and we do so. That makes us different on some level than a planet like Saturn, which has no choice whatsoever. It's just physics doing what physics does. But this again is a theist looking to be special when they're really not. I want to feel like I'm important. Well, you're really not, are you? Not in the grand scheme of things anyhow. You're just a smart animal with an ego, nothing more. Let's be realistic about this.
So it seemed to me that rationality, and really for that matter even intentionality, the idea that I could have an aboutness, that I could be intentional about trying to do things. It's just atoms moving around in my brain. And an atheist like Alex Rosenberg, for example, he explains this from an atheistic perspective. It's an illusion. It's really just an illusion.
No, he explains it from his own perspective. He doesn't speak for all atheists. Nobody does. There is no atheist position. There are only individual atheists, and the only thing that we all agree on is that we don't believe in any gods. I really wish these people could figure that out. There is no atheist worldview. It simply doesn't exist. There are individual atheists and their own views, nothing more. When you talk to an atheist, you're not talking to all of atheism, you're talking to one guy or gal or whatever. One individual with their own thoughts. It really shouldn't be that hard to figure out.
If I were to embrace an atheistic worldview, I had to believe the rather absurd claim that my rationality and my intentionality were illusions.
I don't think they are. I just don't think that they are what you wish they were. That's the thing. It all comes down to expectations, and I think the expectations of most theists, at least the ones that I've talked to, are simply unreasonable. They don't want to live in the world that they actually live in. Too bad. They want to live in a magical happy land in their heads where they're all special and there's a magical man in the sky watching over everyone, and he's going to whisk us all away to a paradise in the clouds if we just follow his rules and kiss his ass. And that's just stupid. That is not the world that you actually live in. Maybe you need to grow up and learn to deal. Try.
But then if my rationality were an illusion, then my belief that atheism was true would also be part of that illusion.
And that right there just proves that you have no clue what the hell you're talking about. There is no belief atheism is true because atheism makes no claims. There is no truth to believe in. We are making no truth claims whatsoever that must be believed. We just reject the bullshit claims that you're spouting because you have no way to back any of it up. It's no wonder these people make these ridiculous videos because they've got no clue what the hell they're talking about, and they don't care. This whole "I've disproven atheism" crap is laughable. You don't even know what atheism is. You don't know what the real world is like. You're just delusional. You are looking only for personal emotional comfort, and you don't care what's actually true. What the hell is wrong with you? Please, someone, let me know down in the comments if you think you understand, because I just don't get it.
And so it seemed like to me that there was some sort of vicious circularity here. The other thing is, when I look around me, there seems to be so much order, so much design.
Well, before you get into that, we're going to stop for the day because that's another huge topic that I don't want to get into this late in the game. We'll pick him up right there next week. Honestly, though, the more that I look at these people, the dumber they look. Every single one of them, they try to argue against atheism without having the slightest clue what the hell atheism actually is, what atheists say, or pretty much anything else. Why? Because they are deluded into thinking that everyone is just like they are. They don't actually care about anything else. They are seeking comfort, and when actual reality isn't comforting, they make a face and look elsewhere because they aren't after real understanding. They just want endless happiness. And that's just stupid, and that's why his entire "it seems to me" bullshit is utterly meaningless. Nobody cares how things seem to you. We care how things actually are. He's just dismissing reality because it doesn't conform to his own ridiculous fantasy. How stupid is that? Anyway, what do you think so far? Let me know down in the comments. I've been toying with a little more longer form content of late. Mostly I will try to do the content that's maybe 6 minutes or so, just to keep my responses reasonable, because more than that, and I've seen the religious start to ramble, and I don't think that's all that entertaining. This video is almost 12 minutes long though, which means I'm breaking it up into 3 parts. So let me know if you like doing longer things, because I've got plenty on my list in that range, some even longer that I could do. I know that's going to make the Supercut fans happy, but I'm just trying to make sure I entertain everybody. I just don't want to get to the point where they're just repeating themselves over and over and over and restating all the stuff they've already said in different ways just to fill time. And I've seen a little bit of that here, but not a lot so far, so let me know what you think. So, until next time, try to make reasonable and rational decisions that don't rely on your feelings, because your feelings don't matter. Only reality does. And it's really too bad that the religious will never be able to figure that out, isn't it?